welcome to the conversation for our generation, where we are solving the problems of today with the wisdom of the past. And my name is Nick Jamel, the creator and the host of the podcast here. And today we will be talking about what government has done with our money, or better yet, the book, What Has Government Done with Our Money? Oops, sorry about that, by Murray Rothbard. And the reason I want to talk about this today is because I think it gives us a good basis and a good understanding of how to understand money at the basic level and how that interacts with our government. I'm reading another book right now on Abraham Lincoln and why he may not have been such a great president, actually. And they bring up some good points about the problems with nationalized banking, with some of these other policies that the Whig Party and then the Republican Party took on that were very problematic and terrible ideas, to be quite honest. And I think we have this sense of money that is just wildly incorrect. And that's what I want to talk about today, and why you should read this book to straighten out your understanding of this concept of money. And it's done in a really readable, easy way, even for people who may not have a deep understanding or a background in economics. But before I dive too far into it, I want to remind you to check out all of the other stuff I got going on at conversationforourgeneration.com. Head there to find out more. If you're listening to this, leave a rating and review on wherever you're listening to podcasts, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. That way you get these weekly book reviews, you get ideas of what you should be reading week after week, you get great discussions like the one I just had with Frank Cunha about traditional architecture, looking at the history of the Pantheon and St. Peter's Basilica. And also, if you're on YouTube watching this, subscribe there and leave a good comment, leave a rating. If you hate what I have to say, leave a comment anyways. I want to, anything that you have to share about these ideas, I want to hear those things. So definitely share that. And then lastly, I know I'm reviewing a book here, but you can also grab my book, Property Rights in the Digital Age, on Amazon. So check that out. Just search Property Rights in the Digital Age, and that will get you right there. And if not, you can always search my name as well, Nick Jamel, and find it that way instead. So with that, let's hop on over to the quote of the week. And I need to pull that up for us. And sorry about that. But for the quote of the week, I have one from here from Murray Rothbard. It's how actually the book starts off in the introduction. He says, "Few economic subjects are more tangled, more confused than money." And I think that's really what the crux of this whole issue is that it's so confusing, so tangled. We don't know how to classify this asset, and yet we use it daily. We understand how to interact with it in so many ways at a personal level, but we don't necessarily, when it gets into the macro monetary policy, what is the Federal Reserve doing, central banks across different countries interacting with each other, how does that all work? And that's where it gets very confusing, very muddled, and it becomes very easy for people who are in power to utilize that confusion in their favor. And I think they do that a lot. But what this book does, and why I like what Murray Rothbard does here, is he takes these incredibly confusing and muddled concepts and boils it down in a simple, easy to understand way that I try to replicate that as well in my book. When I was going through and writing these ideas out, I definitely have some parts that I think are probably, especially earlier on in the book, when I was writing before having read this, that were a little bit not less accessible, because I don't think I'm smart enough to write something that's inaccessible, but definitely not as simple and clear as I could have been. And I was trying to also convey ideas that I had trouble fully conveying. And I think I eventually got it to where it is understandable. But this book here, Murray Rothbard is such a clean, clear thinker that it's very easy to follow his ideas. Even if you knew nothing about money coming into this book, I think you will walk away understanding it much better, and you'll understand how it's the same and how it might be different from other assets that we have and other types of property or possessions. And so that's why I think it's such an important read. Is money is a huge means of control. And I've talked about this in the past in another episode, that by using inflation and some of the methods of monetary uh, policy that we have, what happens is that a oligarchy or an elite group of people get first access to the money and therefore have the most power in our economy. They have tremendous abilities to sway the market, and it's not right. It's not a free market the way that it should be if there are people who are able to get first access and priority access to this kind of a commodity, especially one that's so basic as money. And so that's where I think it affects our lives in a big way. Is we see this right now with the GameStonk thing and everything going on there, that there's sort of a democratization happening in a lot of ways in our society. And these GameStop guys, right, are not GameStop, Reddit guys are buying GameStop and GameStop stock. Wow, I'm having so much trouble with this. And they're pushing back against this institutional money that has the advantage in the market, because they are close to this institutional power, and they are the ones who are nestled up and get the first chances at all of the, basically, I mean, if you're a hedge fund, if you're in that area, you are the ones who get the priority loans that allow you to be first mover and have the what's that called, the kind of economies of scale while investing, so that your returns are meaningful and you're able to pay off those debts. Whereas if I were to borrow $100 and invest and make $7, that's not necessarily as big of a deal. But if you invest $1 billion and you make, right, what is that, 70 million or 700, it's 70 million, that's a big difference, right? Or maybe it's 70 million or 700 million, I can't remember now. I'm trying to do this math in my head and I'm having trouble with the zeros at that point. But regardless, you could see how, even let's say it is 70 million or even 7 million, that's a huge amount of money. And now it's proportionate to $1 billion. Yeah, it's not as much, but you can still, that's a lot more of an impact, I guess I should say, and a much better, you have a little bit more of a scale. Whereas my trades at $7 trade could be wiped away with the fee it takes to trade something back, And so that's what I think at that big scale, you see that happening, where because you have a lot of money, you have a lot of influence. And because of that, you're able to sway the market. But the reason you have all that power and influence is because you have first access to the money. And in this book, you will see why that has not always been the case throughout history, that a certain centralized group of elites have that first access, and why it's so harmful to an economy. And it's not really a free market, and it's really just a way to create more of a cronyist market, or sort of an oligarchy. And that is not what we should be looking for. And that's not true liberty. That's not truly free markets. And it's really and honestly just a recipe for disaster to give a wealthy elite first dibs on the power and the money and the first access to the best ability at that point to generate more wealth, instead of allowing anyone equal opportunity to generate their own fortunes. And so if you want to understand the background on that, I'm trying to not just spew the whole lesson of this book. I'm trying to explain here why it's important. And so if you want to understand how this comes about, I definitely recommend you check out What Has Government Done With Our Money by Murray Rothbard. If you buy it through the links in my show notes, that'll help me out, support me here at the Conversation of Our Generation, and I really appreciate that for those of you who do support me. And if there's other ways you're looking to support, definitely follow me on Twitter at ConOfOurGen, find me on Facebook. You can also go to the blog conversationofourgeneration.com to see more of what's going on there. Buy my book, Property Rights in the Digital Age, available on Amazon. Lots of different ways that you just subscribing here wherever you're listening, if it's a podcast or if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and leave a good rating and review on those places. Like it, leave a comment. Those sorts of things help me reach more people with this message and bring more people into the dialogue. And so that's how I've been able to get some great conversations like I had with Frank, with finding the people like the guys at the Vital Masculinity podcast, Food from Feminism podcast, all sorts of great people who have been able to enrich this dialogue here at the Conversation of Our Generation. That comes because people are sharing this around and bringing more people in, making me aware of different people. So definitely keep that up and let me know if there's anything else. And also, I have the newsletter as well, so definitely subscribe there if you want the monthly newsletter. I'm thinking about maybe trying to curate a little bit more of great conversations that are happening on a weekly basis. So that email is going to go out today. If you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe, but it'll also go out on the blog post, so you can check that out here in a little bit and subscribe to that if you think that's something that you'd like to get weekly. I don't know if I'll always do the blog post, but I will be at least doing the emails for the newsletter consistently. So definitely check that out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Conversation of Our Generation. Let's get the dialogue going. I'll talk to you next time.